Alrighty, let's see if we have anybody showing up. We're still only up to 4. We'll give it a minute. Oh, here we go. Everybody is starting to pop into the room. So welcome everybody to today's webinar on strategic digital advertising. We'll give everybody a minute to hop in. I can see the count going up right now. We're really glad to have you here today. You know, there are a lot of webinars going on right now, so we're glad that you're here with us. I am going to be talking with Ivana today. So I'm Christina Stetter, the EVP at Trivera Interactive. And Ivana, can you introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ivana Skoko, and my primary role at Trivera is focused around client SEO and PPC efforts.
Great. So before we really get into this, I do want to mention, obviously, there are always bandwidth issues. So we are really hoping that we don't have any interruptions of service. Hopefully by doing this at 11 o'clock, we have avoided the onslaught of children logging into Schoology at 9 o'clock in the morning. And if you have any questions throughout the session, please use the Q&A panel. We have Katie Fleming, who is our hidden presenter, so she's not on camera, and you won't hear her, but she is here to answer any questions that you have as we go along. And at the end, we will post this video to YouTube. So if you want to rewatch any of it at any point, visit our YouTube channel. Alrighty, so let's get started. What are we going to do today? So first, we're going to take just about 2 minutes to talk about who Trivera is and what we do. I promise that won't take too long, maybe just a couple of minutes. Then we're going to before we talk about how to plan your advertising, we want to talk about why it fits into a digital integrated strategy, as well as the 4 ways you can get website traffic so that you can understand contextually where it fits into the sales cycle. We will review how to plan your advertising strategy. We have 6 steps that you can follow for that. And then we will talk about the different advertising channels that you can select, the advantages and disadvantages of each one, and then share a couple of tips for developing your creative. So let's get started. I also do want to mention that we're going to try to get you out of here in about 45 minutes. I don't know about you, but I tend to lose interest in webinars after about 45 minutes. So we want to try to stick to that time frame. All right, so let's look at who is Trivera. Well, we started in 1996 as a company called Website Solutions. And all we did back then was develop websites on small screens like the one you see up here, because that was all there was. Google did not exist. Search engine optimization was not a thing. But since that time, the company has expanded its services and grown to become one of the region's oldest and most respected digital marketing companies. We are a Google certified agency, and we really pride ourselves on providing a breadth of services in a really smart and integrated way. So we try to be smarter and more planful than a traditional agency, but more technical, and combine that technical ability that you might see from a developer, but approaching it with creativity as well. So we really try to bring the best of both worlds to our clients. We have a bunch of really great clients that we are super proud of. You'll probably recognize a lot of these people. They are some of the most recognizable brands in the Milwaukee area. And then we also work with a lot of brands you might not have ever heard of. And some of these clients we are really proud to say have been with us for almost our entire 20-year history. So it's really great. And we work with clients in a variety of different ways. Some of them come to us with an existing website, and we don't need to build them a new website. If their website is working, we're not going to rebuild a wall that already exists. However, some of them do need a new website. So depending on what the client needs, we will either start with a website, or we will start with things like search engine optimization, content generation, advertising, lead nurturing, inbound marketing, whatever makes sense. And we, as you can see from looking at all these logos, we don't have any one vertical that we work in, which is really fun because we can take things we learn from one industry and apply them to another. As I mentioned, we are a certified Google partner. So this means that we have to have a certain number of people on our team who are certified in Google. We have to study and pass tests. We also have to do a certain amount of business with Google and generate a particular level of results. So if we cannot meet those thresholds, Google will not allow us to call ourselves a Google partner. And this is great way to, if you're working with a Google partner, know that you are working with someone who really understands Google's products. And let's face it, Google runs the world. So it's really important to work with somebody who understands how Google works and has the most up-to-date knowledge, because we will mention this a couple of times during this presentation, but Google is constantly changing how they do things. All right, so that was it. That was not too painful for talking about Trivera. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of what we are going to do today. So we want to start out by talking about why you should advertise and how that fits into your overall marketing strategy.
So why should you use digital in your ad efforts? And the real obvious answer to that, right, is that you need to sell stuff. You need to help persuade people to either buy your product or your service to achieve your business goals. And with digital marketing now, you have a million ways to do that and get your product or service out in front of customers that are more active participants in the process. But in the past, that wasn't always the case. There was initially more of a, if you build it, they will come approach that relied heavily on organic to drive traffic and have customers find you. So marketers used early SEO techniques like keyword stuffing or excessive tagging or backlinks to try and generate high rankings. And the user experience was more passive. So somebody would search for your business or maybe one of your business critical keywords. They could usually find the information that they were looking for or wanted, but it wasn't really a personalized or shareable experience. So you would get a search engine results page with a bunch of text and blue links. Maybe eventually you would see like a map or a paid ad show up into the mix, but for the most part, you would see an organic listing, you would click on the result, and then that would take you to a website. So early success was primarily measured by website traffic. Now that's a little bit different. So Google has obviously evolved. Online user behavior has changed a lot, especially with the introduction and adoption of social media. Information flow is a lot more immediate and a lot more shareable. So we as marketers need to think about our initiatives in an integrated way and how it all works together. And so this slide will give you a little bit, it's important to note actually first that even if you're not a traditionally digitally savvy or digitally reliant company, today's landscape tells us that online search behavior leads to both online and offline purchases. So from this slide that you'll see, almost 80% of consumers use their smartphones to perform some sort of research. And then 76 to 78% of customers that do a local based in search either visit an in-store or make an in-store purchase in a short amount of time. So people are consuming digital content on a daily basis, and they expect that content to be immediately available, no matter what sort of device or platform that they're using or whether they're online or offline. So then the question becomes, what should you be doing to get people to visit your website? What channels should you be focusing on, and how can you get there? So we're going to talk about 4 different ways that you can get people to your website.
All right, so the 4 basic ways that you can get traffic to your website are organically, direct traffic, referral traffic, and paid traffic. And now we're going to delve a little bit into each kind and talk about the pros and cons of each way that you can bring people to your website. So the first and most obvious one is organic traffic. That is something you experience every day. You put a search query into the search bar, you get a search engine results page, and you click on a link, you land on a website. So this is the best way to get traffic to your website, really, because it is an authentic win-win experience. The user is looking for something and you meet that need. So they get what they want, you get them to your site, and that's great. The good thing about organic traffic is that it has a lot of credibility. People in general don't trust ads. Now, we have stats that we'll share with you later that show that people still click on them, even though they say they don't trust them. But an organic listing has more credibility in our minds than an advertisement. The other thing that's great about organic listings is that you put the work into it and you get the listing And once that content is created on your website, whether it's a video, a blog post, the web page itself, whatever it is, that content is out there. And so it's evergreen. It's not like advertising where you turn the money off and the ad stops. So it does tend to produce the best traffic and leads. It is worth mentioning, though, that just because you didn't pay for that user to visit your site does not mean that organic traffic is free. Organic traffic is generated by producing content, and you have to pay somebody to produce that content, whether you are paying an employee at your company, an agency, somebody is producing that content. And so that there is a cost to it. It just tends to be hidden in other parts of your marketing budget. It's also important to know that if you have a competitor who becomes better at search engine optimization, they can displace you because they're doing a better job. Or if Google changes their algorithm, which is something that happens a lot. Google changed their algorithm 3,200 times last year. So it's really important to understand how organic traffic works if you're going to rely on it to drive traffic to your website. And the last reason that organic traffic can be a disadvantage is because Google is doing a lot of things to steal your website traffic. We're going to show you a few examples of this in today's presentation, but if you really want to learn a lot more about it, we will be speaking at the BizTimes Expo, which was originally scheduled for May. Now it is going to be on August 19th. So if you want to learn more about this, please come visit us there and you can see us hopefully face to face. But let's look at like a 30-second sneak preview of that. So the way that Google is stealing your traffic is by using what we call SERP features. So SERP stands for Search Engine Results Page. And there are 39 types of SERP features that show up on the results page. And because of these SERP features, people are getting the answers they need right on the search engine results page. And they are not needing to click through to any websites because their need has been fulfilled. So the first type of SERP feature that we're going to look at is something called a featured snippet. And that's right on this screen here. So I ask a simple question. I get a snippet up at the top of the page that provides me with enough information that this might actually completely fulfill my need and I don't need to read any more. Now, if I want to learn more, there is a link and I can click through and I can finish reading this article. But if I just want the basic information, it's all right there for me. Some other types of SERP features can help you but not provide clicks to sites. So for example, if I wanted to know for whatever reason, if Ryan Reynolds was married, I can ask that question and the answer comes up right on the screen. You'll notice that this answer is not attributed to any place. So it's just right there. I ask a question, I get the answer, I'm done. There's no click needed. Same thing with the question about where is Stephen Hawking born. I have the answer, I have a picture, I have a map, I have everything I need to know. But it's important to note that Google, with all these algorithms that they have, is becoming so incredibly intelligent that they can actually provide you with answers to questions that you haven't even asked yet. So the third thing that you'll see on the screen here over on the right is the people also ask box. And I'm sure you've seen this before. Usually it shows up about halfway down on the page. And these are questions that Google thinks you might want to ask next based upon the question you just asked, and if relevant, the one you asked before. So without going into all of this too much, the bottom line is that all of these things take up space on the search engine results page. And so even if you are ranking position 1 for a particular keyword, that doesn't mean that your organic listing is going to be at the top of the page. In fact, if you're on a mobile device, position 1 could be several swipes down. So position 1 is not what it used to be, and it's because of what Google is doing to make finding the answers to our questions so much easier.
So all of the things that Christina just mentioned that Google is doing to answer people's questions and queries immediately makes it even more critical to invest in SEO as a digital marketing channel, because they are directly competing with your site for traffic and eyeballs. And even though SEO is typically considered an unpaid marketing channel because you're not technically paying for a listing or a click. You have to pay for the work that goes into optimizing. So there's a lot of work involved in optimizing on-page, off-page, and technical SEO. And you need to do tons of research. Obviously, you need to pay attention to all the algorithm changes that come out, and you need to produce good content. Team Trivera actually has another webinar on our YouTube channel that discusses a little bit more in detail about how to write and market your content specifically for the SEO channel. So if you guys have some extra time, you should go check that out. But along with producing the great content, SEO also includes thinking about off-page and site technical health. So an off-page example would be like link building. Are you getting referral traffic from reputable sources and sources that make sense to your business? And then something else extremely important is your site technical health. So if you have slow load times or your site is not mobilely optimized, maybe you have a canonical issue or you don't have an XML sitemap, all of the keyword optimized content that you create is not going to matter. You're sort of going to be rolling a boulder uphill because proper site architecture is the backbone to good SEO. So if you're creating amazing content, it's not really going to matter if nobody can find your site. So that's why the technical portion is sort of the backbone. We always like to say internally that you can't properly do SEO to a broken site. The second way that you will see traffic come into your website is direct, and this typically occurs when a user directly enters your URL into their browser, or maybe they access your site directly through a bookmark. Just a small note that this type of traffic can also occur if a referring source or channel can't be identified. It'll get lumped under the direct traffic bucket. So some of the advantages to this channel are obviously users get to your site directly, and they typically tend to be a more qualified customer because they're already familiar with your brand. The disadvantage here is just because you got that direct traffic to your brand or product at that point doesn't necessarily mean that that came for free. There's really not a magic potion that makes people wake up and be aware of your brand or who you are or what you're selling. So more than likely, there was another marketing effort or touch point involved to produce that familiarity with your brand or product.
The third way that you can get traffic is referral traffic. So what this is it's traffic that comes from another site. So what referral traffic means is that you're doing something right with your marketing somewhere else. So for example, someone else mentioned you on their website. Maybe they added a link to their site, or they promoted a blog post that you wrote on their Facebook or LinkedIn page. Or maybe you have an active PR team and an ongoing effort, and you got mentioned in a trade publication or your local newspaper or something like that, and they linked back to your site. So referral traffic is great because you have the implicit endorsement from the other site, which gives you credibility. It is an SEO ranking factor. It's not the #1 ranking factor, but links are important to search engine optimization. However, it's important to note that depending on where the referrer came from, it can impact the quality of the traffic or their behavior on your site. So a great example, I post a link to a blog on my LinkedIn profile, and someone clicks through, lands on the Trivera site, and reads the blog. Once they've read that blog, ideally we'd like them to visit every other page on our website, but more likely than not, they're going to read the blog and then leave the site. That is normal user behavior. So bounce rates from referral traffic tend to be higher than from other channels, because what happens is the user reads about something very particular on your site, they visit your site, they fulfill their purpose, and they leave. So referral traffic is great, but it is only one part of an integrated digital marketing strategy. You have to have a big picture view when you're thinking about this.
So the fourth way that you'll see traffic coming into your site is through paid media channels. And there's a variety of tactics that fall under this bucket. But basically, it's traffic that comes to your site from because a customer clicked on a paid search ad or an affiliate link or a socially promoted post. And we have, as Christina mentioned earlier, we have some studies that show that even though people say they don't necessarily trust paid ads, they see that they'll click on them anyway because it's kind of a convenience factor. So according to some Nielsen Trust data that we have, 47% of people say that they actually trust an ad they'll see in a search engine results page, but 58% of people will actually click on them. And the same holds true for the social channel as well. So only 46% of people say they trust the ads, but 56% of people will actually click on them. Some of the advantages to this channel is that there's a lot of control over your brand and its positioning. So unless you're doing some sort of automated campaigns, you're controlling the messaging, you're controlling the targeting, the budgeting, and the placements, and you're only paying for the clicks. And so then some of the disadvantages are that obviously it costs money, right? And cost per click can get expensive depending on the industry or category that you're in. So if you're selling a t-shirt or shoes, that cost per click is going to be a lot less than some of the categories that we've seen in like finance or law, where cost per click can get up to $20, $30, $40. And then also this traffic can be lower quality depending on the type of campaign that you're running and the targeting methods that you're using. And then obviously, once the money runs out, this traffic and sales can stop from this channel. So that's also a disadvantage. This is going to be most of our focus for today, the paid marketing aspect of it. But we want to stress that all of the digital marketing efforts matter, and they should sort of all be used in an integrated and holistic way, depending on what your goals are and what your ad strategy is. So Christina is going to kick us off on how to plan your ad strategy.
Alrighty, so let's get into what we really came here to talk about today, which is how to make this happen. So before we go through the 6 steps for planning your ad strategy, we need to remember that the main advantage of digital advertising is that it can be measured. So, you know, you used to do things like a radio ad or a television or billboard, and you're maybe still doing those, they help, but you couldn't directly attribute business metrics to those ads, unless of course you said something like, come into our store and ask for the XYZ deal. Or you could ask people, how did they find out about you? But that is a horribly unreliable way of knowing how people found out about you. So the good thing about digital ads is that they allow ROI to be measured in a very specific way. You can even attribute in-store purchases to online ads, depending on how you set up your campaign. So you could be using geo-targeting or beacons measuring foot traffic. Google actually even has the ability to attribute ads because most of us have the Google Maps app on our phone, and you have that app running all the time so that it will function for you. If Google doesn't know where you are, the Maps app won't work. And because Google knows where you are every second of every minute of every day, they know when you walked into a store, and they know whether or not you saw an ad related to that store before. Now, it might seem kind of weird for me to talk about measurement before we talk about the 6 steps for planning, but we wanted to mention it first because you need to be thinking about what are you going to measure the entire time you're planning your campaign. Because if you don't set yourself up to measure, you won't be able to measure, and then you won't know if your ads worked. So another thing to think about as we talk through all of this is that not every kind of ad is right for every point in the sales cycle. So you're going to see a graphic very similar to this multiple times today. And the information in the middle will change out a little, but one of the things you will notice is that there's a lot of overlap between what we put in each of the 4 quadrants. And there is a lot of overlap between how you can use these various ad channels at various stages of the sales cycle. And so that's why this planning stage is so important. You can't start by saying, let's do some pay-per-click. You have to start by thinking about how else could I or should I promote my business? So you want to think about marketing and advertising as a continuous conversation. You know, you don't ask someone to marry you on the first date. You have to go through an awareness, engagement, conversion, retain cycle to make a sale. Just the same way on your first date, you don't reveal everything about yourself. You get to know somebody better, and then maybe after a while, you get engaged. So, and this is important because people are exposed to a lot of different marketing messages. In fact, according to a media dynamics study, the average adult is exposed to 5,000 or more brands every day, about 300 and something ads every day, and only about 12 of them make an impression. So you really have to think about this because you want to be one of those 12.
So your digital ad strategy should start with a planning process. And we have 6 different steps here that we're going to be taking you through and talking through. But we wanted to note that this stage in the game takes time, but it's really the only way to ensure that you're going to be using your budget and your resources effectively. So if you skip this step, it's really easy to create sort of piecemeal campaigns that aren't really integrated, and it can quickly become ineffective. And it's really easy also for your tactics then to turn into your goals. So Christina is going to start with the first one of determining the state of the market when you're planning your ad strategy.
All right, so there are several sort of subparts to this. This is actually the part that kind of takes the longest, but it's really important. So the first thing you have to do is you have to think about who is your ideal customer. And if your ideal customer is anybody, that's not your ideal customer. That is way too broad. You need to think about who is most likely to purchase from you and why they are doing that. So you want to think about their demographic background. Where do they get their information from? What are their channel preferences from communication? What are their pain points? And not just the pain points that are directly related to the product or service that you're trying to sell, but what is going on in their life? And how do you help them solve these problems? You want to think about, what does this person care about? Now, what we do at Trivera is we create personas, and there's an example of one up here. So it takes a while to do this because you have to do a lot of research and you really need to understand this customer. By turning them into a real fake person, you can think about them not just as a user or a visitor or whatever you want to call this person. You think about them as an actual human being. And how would you talk to this person if you were face to face with them as an actual human being? The other thing that it does is it helps get you out of your own head, because you don't want to be thinking about what you want to say. You need to think about what the other person needs to hear. People like to have their problems solved, so they like to be solved to, not sold to. It's really important to remember that this, even though these are your ads, they're not about you. They're about the other person.
The other important thing to keep in mind when determining the state of the market is it's important to identify who your competition is, both directly and indirectly, to see where you can compete successfully. So you may find through the process that your online or indirect competitors are very different than your direct competitors. And more than likely, you also will probably discover that competitors that you haven't even considered typically in your competitive set in the online space, because you're technically competing with every other website or brand for keywords that are similar to yours. And then once you've identified who your competitors are, you'll want to sort of get a feel for how they're approaching the market. You can visit their websites, sign up for their newsletters or emails, determine how they're advertising, maybe what channels they're using. Do they have a social media presence? And if they do, how are they using it? Identifying all these marketing opportunities will help you compete more successfully and then hopefully start outperforming them.
All right, and the third part of determining the state of the market, and this is really important, is to do a SWOT analysis. And you might be thinking, now, Christina, this is so basic. This is marketing 101. I do not need to do this. But the truth is, you really do. So we recommend taking a piece of paper, making 4 quadrants on it, and think about your strengths and weaknesses, which are internal aspects of your company that either make it easier for you to compete or more difficult for you to compete. And then also list your opportunities and threats. So these are external things that are going on in the world that help you achieve your goals or make it more difficult for you to achieve your goals. and write them down and share them across your decision-making team. We do this with every client when we kick them off. And it is amazing how often there is disagreement between people who work together on a daily basis about some of these aspects. So write them down and share them, because you might be surprised to learn how other people at your company see your marketplace positioning. So you need to know where you're starting from so that you can figure out how you're going to get to where you want to go. All right, the next thing you need to do, finally, we're on to step 2. You need to look at your current efforts. So obviously you want to look at all of the things you are doing for marketing. But if you are doing advertising, take a look at your current advertising and document those results. And don't just look at what I would call a marketing metric. So don't necessarily focus on things like impressions, likes, and some of those maybe more fluffy metrics. You want to focus on actual business metrics too. So how many sales are you actually getting? Think about how it's impacting the bottom line for your company, and what would your CFO want to know? And then also look at how is your website contributing to that. So look at user behavior, time on site, things like what pages are people visiting, because there is a lot of data, and Ivana's going to share something with you in just a sec that explains how people use websites and how the purchase process works when an online channel is involved. And that involves micro and macro conversions. And this is a super important concept to understand when you are planning your advertising strategy. So let's talk about those for a sec.
So while you are evaluating your current efforts, it's important to note that typically customers will visit a website 8 to 12 times before they actually make a final conversion. So there are a lot of small actions or micro conversions people can take on your website, or different ways that they can engage with your brand that can be seen as steps towards that more macro conversion, and can also give you a lot of good data as to how people are using your website or how they're engaging with your brand. So it's important to start thinking about what kinds of engagement and awareness you can be implementing and measuring on your site in small actions that make sense for your business, that would give you more insight into how people are engaging with your brand. So for example, do you want people to view a certain number of pages on your site? Do you maybe want them to watch a video or sign up for your email or newsletter? Do you want them to download a white paper or ebook? These are all sort of smaller micro conversions that help lead to that macro conversion. And so how can you start adding and expanding to your site some of these smaller actions that you can measure that will eventually take your customer to that lead or sale? And then the third step in planning the ad strategy process is determining what your goals are. So as we mentioned earlier, goals will be different at each point in the sales funnel, as will your micro and macro conversions. So even though Christina mentioned there's some overlap, each goal is really going to drive the marketing channel and platform that you decide to use. So if you're building a campaign around awareness, those touch points and channels are likely going to be different than those that you're going to use once you identify that a customer may be ready to convert or even promote your brand in a more advocacy stage.
All right, so let's look at kind of a funny example here. So if any of you are parents, you've probably had the joyous experience of walking into a room and seeing your toddler with a pair of scissors in their hand, either giving themselves their own artfully done haircut or doing it to one of your siblings. And depending on what's going on in your life, you're going to react to that in different ways. So, for example, if you are social distancing and you're not seeing anybody in person for who knows how long, you might just do a Google search on how fast does hair grow. In this case, I just want information. I don't want to buy anything. So an ad might not be appropriate at that stage. However, if you're not social distancing, or maybe someone in your family has a wedding coming up next week, and you're going to be taking a whole bunch of really expensive portraits that are going to hang on your mother's wall in perpetuity, you might be freaking out a little bit about your toddler's new haircut. In which case, you might do a search like kids hairstylists near me, or maybe even hats for toddlers. And in those cases, an ad might be more appropriate and actually appreciated. If I am searching for a hairstylist near me, to see an ad show up in the knowledge panel with a location that tells me this place is only a mile from my house, they are indeed a kid's hairstylist, not an adult barber, that would be really helpful to me. So it's important to think about where someone is at the stage. And remember that there are different types of ads that you can do at different stages. You might do a location-based ad for a search like kids hairstylist near me, but a shopping ad is completely appropriate if you're searching for hats for toddlers. So not every ad works in every situation, and it's important to think what's going on in their life right now and how can you help solve their problem. And then the next step is to look at your channels. So as you can see by looking at the graphic, there is overlap in which channels fit in with which stage of the sales cycle. And it's important to think about that because, as Ivana mentioned, people are going to visit your website multiple times. They're going to conduct multiple searches, unless you're doing something super quick, like it's an emergency and I need a hat for my toddler. You're probably going to look for something for a while, especially if it's an expensive purchase. So you want to make sure that you are providing consistency across channels and across platforms, across ads, so that people will recognize your brand and you don't have to start from scratch every single time. The other thing to note is that technology can help create that cross-channel experience. So I'm sure we've all had the experience of shopping for something online, abandoning a cart or not completing a purchase, and then going on Facebook later on in the day and seeing an ad for the exact thing that you were just looking at online. People have gotten used to that kind of targeting and that technological integration, and they expect that from advertising. So whenever possible, you want to use technology to help show current and potential customers that you recognize who they are. Otherwise, you could end up with a situation that would be almost like if I talk to you on the phone and then go somewhere and run into you and say, geez, it's been so long since we've talked. And you would think I was crazy because we had just talked on the phone a half an hour earlier. So when possible, you want to use technology to help enable that experience that tells your customers, whether it's through retargeting or using HubSpot inbound marketing or segmenting your audiences, so that people feel like you recognize them and you know who they are. They will appreciate that. Alrighty, so now that we have covered how to plan it, let's talk about the different places that you can place your advertising and the advantages and disadvantages of each channel so that you can make some appropriate choices for your message.
So the first channel, paid marketing channel that we're going to discuss is pay-per-click or PPC. This is really just a method or a strategy of driving traffic to your website that gives you the opportunity to pay for a placement on a search engine results page or a sponsored listing. And as you can see from the examples on this slide, one of the most common ways to do that is using Google PPC ads, which give you the opportunity to pay for spots on a search engine results page and then pay for a price per click based on keywords or a set of keywords that you're bidding on. Some other examples of PPC ads may be paid ads on Facebook or Twitter ad campaigns or even sponsored messages on LinkedIn. This is a channel that can offer a really good return on your investment when it's done properly. However, if you don't understand necessarily how the channel works or you're not familiar with the ad platforms, or even if you don't have the time or resources to consistently monitor and optimize once you have a campaign running, it's very easy to lose money quickly.
So as Ivana mentioned, there are a lot of advantages to this. One of the best ones is that you have a lot of control over the budget. So if you're doing Google pay-per-click, you can set a daily and a monthly budget, and it can be wherever you want it to be. You get a lot of data about how people find and interact with your ads, which can allow you to make changes really pretty quickly and react to what's working and what isn't. The other thing that Google will tend to tout a lot about what is so great about pay-per-click is that there is a lot of automation available. That can also be a huge con, along with the fact that you need to understand how this platform works, which Ivana has alluded to. So I do want to talk for a second about automation because Google pushes it really hard. So you can take some online training from Google and learn how to set up your own campaigns and have them up and running really pretty quickly. But it is important to really understand how they work and to monitor them very constantly. Otherwise, you can end up with some unexpected results for your advertising. So there's a couple examples on here. So what has happened with all of these ads is they are using some automation that Google is really pushing hard called dynamic keyword insertion. And before I explain what's happened here, I should tell you that dynamic keyword insertion can be fantastic. You just have to understand how to build the ads. And you have to monitor them very consistently. So sometimes you can end up with some unexpected results, such as here in the Braille Superstore. So the person searched for the word Braille. Google matched it to the Braille Superstore. That makes sense. That's what they were searching for. But if you read the ad copy, it says thousands of Braille products, many of which you've never seen before. So it's just kind of a little ironic because that's probably not the way you would word that ad if you were actually writing it with the word Braille in it. The other challenge is seen with the example in the middle. In this case, the searcher misspelled the word children. So I like to say all the time that people judge things they can't understand based upon the things that they can. So in this case, dynamic keyword insertion, because Google is so smart, recognized that the word that you really wanted to type was children, but it didn't correct it. And it placed the misspelling into your ad. Now, most people don't understand how these ad works. And so they will see the ad with the misspelling and assume that your company made the mistake. Not that they made the mistake, even though it was really their fault. And because people judge things they can't understand based upon the things that they can, they could extrapolate that to the quality of your services, the quality of the food at your restaurant, whatever. So it's important to know how it works. And then the last example, I have to admit, I found on the screen because I thought it was funny. It's just kind of an ironic way that things can work out. I mean, I know that people tell other people to go to hell all the time, and there are probably a lot of ways to get there, but I don't think anybody would go to smartertravel.com and book a flight to hell. So just something to think about when you are building your ad campaigns. Dynamic keyword insertion can definitely work, but you need to monitor your ads.
So another paid digital marketing channel we'll be just going through is digital display. And this is something that is highly driven by visuals. So it's advertising on apps or websites or different social media sites that's through banner ads. That's very, it can be a combination of text and logos, typically some sort of video or audio messaging, and that then leads to a landing page or a website. There's a couple of different types of digital display ads. One is site placement. And so this gives you the opportunity to select specific sites in a display network that you want your ad to appear on. And then there's also contextual display ads, which is a little bit more automated and based on relevant content. So Google analyzes the content on a website and then matches that against your ad based on some keywords, topics, location, and language. So for example, if you are selling pet food, you may have your ad placed on like a pet adoption site. That would be a contextual ad. And then there's also remarketing, which allows you to target audiences who may have already visited your site but have not fully converted yet. Some of the advantages to this type of digital marketing is that it's used well for building brand awareness, right? So it allows you to potentially market your product or services to customers that may not even necessarily be looking for your goods or services or even know that you exist. So as they continue to see images of your brand, they may be enticed to click to learn more, and then hopefully ultimately buy and convert. Another advantage to this channel is that the cost per click tends to be a little bit lower than, say, for a search engine results click, which can translate to lower cost per conversion. And then you have a lot of cost control in this channel because you're setting your budget. There's also a lot of great opportunities in segmenting audiences and retargeting, so you can target people that have already been to your site, like I mentioned earlier, and haven't converted, so they still continue to see your brand as they're browsing other places of the internet, keeping you sort of top of mind. Some of the disadvantages that we see with this channel is that it does tend to produce lower click-through rates and conversion, because people have sort of learned, especially people that are more internet savvy, have learned to sort of block ads out. There's some banner blindness and ad avoidance. So there's also time and resources and probably cost involved in creating ads that have compelling content that people will want to click on.
The next channel that we're going to talk about is social. This is probably something you're all familiar with, having been on social media. So paid ads are served to the audiences using the social platform. These can be great because typically there's a low cost of entry to these. However, it is worth mentioning that because some social channels, in particular, I'm thinking of LinkedIn, do have unique abilities to target people, they will sometimes charge for that. So LinkedIn advertising can be a lot more expensive than other social platforms because it's the only one that offers the ability to target by things like job description or job title. So it can be good and bad. The other thing is that social offers a lot of what we call native advertising opportunities. So there's an example of one of those on the screen right now. So I'm in my social feed. I see something that looks like a post one of my friends could have posted, but it's actually been paid for. And if the targeting is done well, it's relevant. So this actually showed up in my social feed. I'm a marketer. This is something that I might actually click on. So it can be a really great way to relate to people and be helpful. The disadvantage is that these can be kind of consuming to build out. We'll look at this in a sec. And that the ROI might not be as high or immediate because it is more like display in the fact that it's kind of interruption marketing. Someone isn't necessarily looking for what you are offering. You're showing it to them because they're likely to be interested. So the other disadvantage you can see right here as you look at these samples of all of these different ads is that they all come in different sizes. The rules of engagement for each platform are different. And so they can be time consuming and kind of complex to build out because you can't just set up 2 ad sizes and have it expand up and down. You have to handle it each channel separately and really think about what that audience wants. The other thing is that advertising on a social platform really should be done in conjunction with organic social. So if you don't have the time to be posting, following, and curating to your organic social channels, paid social will not work as well for you. You really should do the 2 of those things together.
And the final paid channel we're going to be touching on today is not necessarily always thought about, but can be effective, is the affiliate marketing sector. It accounts for about 15% of all digital media revenue. And in the US, it's like a $4 billion industry and $12 billion globally. And what this is basically you are working with a third-party website or publisher to generate traffic or sales to your products or services. So the publisher will then earn a commission for every lead or sale that they refer to you. Some of the advantages here, obviously, it's performance-based, right? So you're paying for a lead or you're paying for a sale. You're not necessarily paying for a click. Strong affiliates also have their own sort of communities and audiences already built in, which gives you the opportunity to sort of broaden your audience and potentially broaden your sales and traffic. And then there's a really low barrier to entry to get this program up and running. You're really selecting a program you want to participate in, adding a tracking code to your website, and you're basically up and running. The disadvantages to this channel is because there's a low barrier to entry, there can be some intense competition in the market, and some affiliates, especially the bigger, more well-known ones, can impose hefty fees for their services. So you can pay high commission rates or fees for that sale or the lead. Traffic in this channel can also be irregular. One day you can have one of your offers or promotions go viral and have tons of customers, and then the next day you might have none. And then also an issue within this channel is that some affiliates can tend to disregard some of your brand voice and identity, especially if they have a lot of user-generated content on their sites. And then this next slide just goes through a few examples that you may not even realize are considered an affiliate marketing channel, but they are, and they typically fall into a few different categories. So one is like deal and coupon sites that tend to promote sort of the best deals, promotions, or offers available online. And that can be anything from products to credit cards to travel deals. And then there's also loyalty and reward affiliates that will give you some sort of cash back for shopping online, or you can get airline rewards points for shopping or hotel rewards. And then another one is content affiliates, which are blogs and influencers.
Okay, so before we wrap it up for today, we don't really have a lot of time to get into developing creative, but if you've gone to the trouble of planning your advertising, we obviously want to share a few quick tips with you for how you can execute this plan effectively. So the first thing is to remember the basics and keep it simple. If you've ever seen the City of Milwaukee's logo, that is definitely an example of no simplicity. So that logo has a stalk of wheat and the city hall and a bridge and a tree and a beer mug and a picnic table, and I don't even know what's all in it. But it's got a lot of stuff in it. And when you look at it, you don't know what to look at. So what you want to do is stick to one message and be concise. You want to have short, catchy copy. You want to have really high quality imagery and a solid call to action. If you are trying to emphasize every point within your ad in some way, bold, highlighted, bulleted, button, whatever, the person looking at your ad will not know where to look. There is no information hierarchy. If your eye doesn't know where to start, it bounces around and you just blow up the whole thing in your mind and you don't think about it at all. A display ad has at max 3 seconds to make an impression. So you really need to keep the message super simple. The other thing is, we've mentioned this multiple times, pay attention to what's going on with your advertising. You want to test and measure everything. The nice thing about digital advertising is you can change your messaging, you can change your creative, you can change your targeting really pretty easily. You don't want to change too much too fast or you'll get confused about what actually worked, but you can test, measure, and change pretty easily. Also, be sure to think about the mobile experience first. Remember when Ivana showed how people visit websites 8 to 12 times? Most of the time, this experience starts on a mobile device. So you want to make sure that your ad is as effective as possible in the mobile space, and then scale the size of the ad up from the mobile size. And as we've also mentioned a bunch of times, make sure it's relevant to your audience and their stage in the sales cycle. So once again, I can't say this enough, it's not about what you want to say, it is about what the other person needs to hear and how can you be helpful and meet their needs. And then really the last thing is, don't be afraid to ask for help. Google does offer a lot of great help tools online when it comes especially to pay-per-click, but if you don't understand what you're doing, don't be afraid to call in an expert. The best campaigns are ones that are designed by people who do this for a living, honestly. You know, it's just like how if you own a fast car, that doesn't make you a race car driver. And if you own graphic design software, it doesn't mean you're a good graphic designer. Having access to Google Ads does not make you an experienced media buyer. You can do it. You can get started. If you get confused, though, please ask for help. That's what professionals are here for.
And the bonus tip for today is to create and use specific and intentional landing pages. So people don't like to think when they're looking for stuff online. So if you're creating a campaign around specific goals and conversion points, you want to create an appropriate landing page for that target audience that gives them something immediate of value that helps convert them at a higher at a higher point, and then captures a little bit of information about who they are. So if you are a retailer that is building a campaign around a new shoe line, don't send customers to your homepage. Create a landing page around that line and include your most important information first. Benefits driven copy, obviously, and a call to action. The goal here is that you want to create minimal barriers to that conversion point, and you don't want the customer to work to find that information.
Alrighty, so what's next if you were doing this, and basically known as what we didn't cover today. So typically we do our learning sessions as 2-hour lunch and learns. In the interest of trying to keep this to 45 minutes, which we blew by 10 minutes ago, we can't include everything, obviously. So what we didn't cover is keyword research. It's really important to understand how to choose the right keywords for your campaigns. We didn't talk about how to measure and adjust, but if you want to know more, please keep an eye on the Trivera website. Once we can all be together again, we will offer this as an in-person session and we'll get into those topics. The other thing, if you are more of a local advertiser and you're interested in learning how local advertising works, Ivana and I will be doing Tip Tuesday next week, which is a short conversation, typically around 15 minutes or so, where we talk about a digital topic, and we put it up on our YouTube channel at noon every Tuesday. So keep an eye out for that. We also post those to our website in the resources section. So the other thing you can do too is go to Trivera.com and subscribe to our newsletter. And then when we do a lot of stuff, we push it out as a newsletter, and you don't even have to go anywhere. It just shows up in your inbox like magic. So I want to thank all of you who stuck it out for this hour and learned something from us. We hope that this was really helpful to you. We appreciate your time. We know that it's valuable, and we look forward to seeing you in person someday. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to visit the Trivera website and reach out to us, and we will be happy to help you with that. So goodbye, Ivana. I hope you have a great day.
Bye.